because up until this point, only my parents and my husband and I knew about the abortion. Everybody else knew that we were pregnant, and then the story was that we miscarried because of her condition, because we didn't want to deal with shame on top of grief. And with the book coming out, we did something I call a truth tour and told everybody what really happened. And luckily, everybody was very warm and loving and embraced us, even though we'd had to keep it under wraps for so long.
Welcome to the Poison Honey podcast, where we discuss the bitter truths of life with raw vulnerability, honesty, and a dash of humor. I am your host, Manaraka of Gray, and before we continue, I have a very quick announcement for you. I am in the process of revamping my podcast for season 3. So this includes giving it its own channel. So for the coming months, I will be re-releasing season 1 and 2. Season 1 is unfortunately only available in audio. I'm sorry, but the rest will be in video content, so stick around to see the evolution. In today's conversation, we explore breaking silence and finding strength in sharing our truth. Let's begin. Today, we have Kelsey Walker with us. Kelsey has written a book, Face Everything and Rise, where she shares her personal journey going through life's most difficult decisions, terminating a wanted pregnancy due to severe medical complications. She has since then also founded an organization, From the Green Desk, which is a nonprofit organization that offers free support to others navigating similar experiences. Welcome, Kelsey.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining. We're exploring stories of vulnerabilities this season. So, what is the story of vulnerability that you want to share with us?
Yeah, the story of vulnerability that I would want to share with you guys is surrounding my book that I wrote, Face Everything and Rise. It is the story of my abortion with our daughter at 18 weeks. Do you want me to go ahead and tell the story?
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically what happened was at 17 weeks pregnant, we found out that our daughter had osteogenesis imperfecta type 2, which is the lethal form of brittle bone disease. So all of the bones in her body were broken. Her ribs were breaking in on her lungs and her heart, and she was suffering. Right. And there was a chance that her condition could take my life too. So we made the difficult choice to terminate the pregnancy. My husband and I made the decision together. And it was incredibly hard. The laws in the United States make it harder.
Right. Mm-hmm.
During the day of the procedure, because it's a full day long procedure at that stage of pregnancy, they asked me 6 times if I wanted to go through with the procedure, trying to talk me out of it, which is their job. Like that is part of the law, is that they try to talk you out of it. Deep down in my heart, did I want to be there? No, but who really wants to be there in that position? Nobody. But, I knew it was something I needed to do to end her suffering and save my life.
Right.
So that happened. There was also the fact that they give you something called midazolam. It's a drug that makes you sleepy and is supposed to make you forget what was going on. But because they made me sleepy, every time I would fall asleep, I would stop breathing. So they had to keep waking me up during the procedure. So I remember everything that happened. And it's because of the laws, the fact that you can't be in a traditional hospital for an abortion. You have to be in a clinic, that they can't fully anesthetize you and put you fully out. So I was traumatized by seeing her body in parts.
Right.
You know, that was one of the problems with the laws that were wrapped around us. Also, the fact that during the final stage of the procedure, they did not let my husband come back into the room with me for the worst part of it because they didn't want him traumatized too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the laws that we've got here are causing harm to folks. And, I developed post-traumatic stress disorder from the trauma that was associated with it because of, the laws that were surrounding it. It took me a long time to find support. And, in my book, it talks about, me being suicidal because I lost a child and because I didn't have my post-traumatic stress under control. And it was incredibly hard. And so, from that, I, I got some help. It took me a while. Like I said, part of the reason why was because, when you go to a clinic and you have an abortion, they give you 4 phone numbers and they say, don't stray from these 4 phone numbers for support. And it's, the suicide hotline, the abortion support hotline, which is a lot like the suicide hotline. They give you a number for a psychiatrist in Overland Park, which is 3 hours away from where I lived at the time.
Yeah.
And then they give you the after hours phone number for the clinic, because if something goes wrong, if you're in like incredible pain, or if your bleeding is funny or something like that, if you go to an emergency room, they won't know how to treat you because they're not experienced with that kind of procedure. So those are the 4 phone numbers you get for support after you have an abortion. And it was incredibly hard because I frequented those phone numbers, but the thing is that there was no long-term support.
Right.
And no like mental health support other than medication. So I strayed off the list and I contacted what I thought was a abortion support group. It was a anti-choice organization that ambushed me with a pastor telling me that, we might pray for your baby, but you're going to go to hell.
Right. Wow.
And yeah, so that was also deeply scarring. I also had, I wanted to have my daughter's ashes blessed because we got a tiny little bit of ashes back. And so I contacted 7 churches to like have her ashes blessed, have a small service for her. And all 7 churches said no, because she was aborted. They would not honor her that way.
That just baffles me.
Yeah. It's awful. It's, what level of humanity are you that you have a grieving mom and a baby that was taken had to be taken too soon, and you're not going to, I'm clearly reaching out for God, and they clearly smacked my hand away.
Yeah.
So it took me another 2 months to find a psychologist to help me with my stuff, because I was scared at that point to reach out to anybody.
Of course, yeah.
And so with the help of a psychologist and then just several years of therapy, and then I went into doing EMDR therapy, which is a special kind of therapy for post-traumatic stress. Yes, you follow like fingers and it's rapid eye movement.
Yeah.
So with that, and the fact that Texas introduced this heartbeat bill, I got angry enough and focused enough that I wrote my book, and it came pouring out of me in like 15 to 20 pages at a time.
Right.
And I finally was near the end of finishing my book, and I went to the Women's March in Kansas City in October. And I held a sign up for Hope and I that said, I my baby was suffering and I would have died. You know, this is the truth surrounding abortion, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I was scared because it's a pretty inflammatory sign. But what I found was, people held their hands to their hearts when they saw my sign. And then they would come and ask me about it. They would embrace me physically and figuratively. They, asked, had me tell them my story, and some of them prayed with me
Right.
for Hope. It was really a beautiful healing moment for me because that was the first time that we shared our story out loud. Because up until this point, only my parents and my husband and I knew about the abortion. Everybody else knew that we were pregnant, and then the story was that we miscarried because of her condition,
Right.
because we didn't want to deal with shame on top of grief.
Mhm.
And with the book coming out, we did something I call a truth tour and told everybody what really happened. And luckily, everybody was very warm and loving and embraced us, even though we'd had to keep it under wraps for so long.
Right. So I just wanted to backtrack a little bit because you mentioned
Yeah,
a specific law called the heartbeat law.
yeah.
Can you explain a bit more what this is for me or anyone else?
So the heartbeat bill is a bill specifically in the state of Texas.
Mhm.
And basically, it makes it so that at 6 weeks pregnant, which is typically before anyone knows that they're pregnant,
Right.
um, after 6 weeks, you can no longer have an abortion. And if you do have an abortion, like if you travel outside of the state to have an abortion, or if you somehow have one in the state, there is a $10,000 bounty that is placed on you.
Wow.
Yeah. And several other states are adopting this since the war in Ukraine and Russia started. 5 different other states have copied the heartbeat bill and have passed the legislature because they're keeping everybody focused over here,
Of course, as
and so
usual.
they're sliding um, the stuff through. And the state that I'm in, Missouri, is even going so far as to criminalizing if you get an abortion outside of the state.
Right.
So it'll go on your permanent, you know, your record.
Why do you think that these these people in government find it so important to? I find what it is essentially is policing women's bodies and what they can or cannot do with it. Why do you think this is like a thing that it's so prominent over there?
For some reason, you know, people over here have this whole slut shaming kind of story surrounding abortion. They're thinking that women are going out to the club and sleeping around, and then they wind up pregnant and they need an abortion.
Right.
And if people are out there, that's their choice, it's their body. But far and wide, what I've found is that it's not those women who are needing the healthcare. It's women like me who need it for medical reasons. It's women who are raped, people who have, cases of incest. There was even a woman whose name is Anna from Texas,
Mhm.
who was pregnant, and at 18 weeks her water broke.
Right.
And they did an ultrasound and her baby was malformed and was dying. And she needed the procedure that I had. And because she was in the state of Texas, she couldn't have it. And so she had to wait and hope her body recognized the pregnancy had ended,
Mhm.
hope that her body miscarried, and hope that she didn't get a massive infection that could kill her.
Right. So what happened in the end with Anna?
She's alive still, from what I understand. I hope that if she's listening somewhere that she, reaches out, because I would, love to just share battle wounds with her. But it's just, thank goodness it worked out okay. But not everyone's going to be that lucky.
No, of course not. And it's what you say, it's very incredibly dangerous, especially in such situations where it's not even medically ethical not to do it for the women involved. It's just, it keeps baffling me that people think that they from all of the issues that truly need laws and these types of things to be tackled, that laws policing women's bodies, and especially when it's a medical procedure of importance, to ban that instead of doing something, let's say, for poverty.
Right? There's like a ton of other things they could be doing with their time besides policing healthcare that's absolutely needed. If anything, they should be turning around and investing the time and money that they're using to argue to advance the procedure. So
Right.
that way it's less hard on women. Just it's nuts.
So how has this experience like affected you in your daily life?
Up until a year ago, it I still get flashbacks even today. Luckily, they're regulated with medicine and with therapy and things like that. But up until a year ago, it ruled my life with depression. We got pregnant again after Hope. She was a surprise. She beat the birth control. And that was incredibly triggering because it was my own body that I had trauma with. Those same symptoms of pregnancy and things like that were incredibly triggering.
Mhm.
So, it was very hard, and it still caused me a lot of struggle with work and stuff like that because, memory fog comes with it, just being jumpy and scared and reactive in general because you're reliving your worst moments all the time.
Right.
So better now. And because of everything that happened to me, I founded a nonprofit.
Right. I read a little bit. It was called the Green Desk. Can you
Yes,
tell me more about it?
yeah, so it's from the Green Desk. If you go to the Green Desk, it's actually a work share space in New York.
Okay.
So it's
Correct.
called, yeah, so it's called From the Green Desk.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's because I literally work from a green desk. That's where I wrote my book from.
Mhm.
And it is a nonprofit that is, we do coaching as well as group therapy for women who have had abortions, lost children, or miscarried. And it really is surrounding building that community that I didn't have whenever I had my own procedure. And the thought is that we get added to that list of phone numbers that you get after procedure. And also, as we talk and get connected with OBs for women who have lost children, we become that point of contact. Of course, for the coaching, I'm not a licensed psychologist,
Right.
but there is a lot of value in peer-to-peer interactions with people who have been there. Also, the services are free, so if someone needs just something and is
Mhm.
struggling, they can reach out and not have to worry about payment, because that's something else that we struggled with. Was I worked for a nonprofit, my husband worked for the school district when everything went down with Hope, and so we couldn't afford psych the psychologist every week. So this coaching program, as well as the group therapy, which the group therapy does have a licensed psychologist running it, helps envelop them in a community of healing. And then we also have a blog, and then hopefully a podcast towards the end of March that we'll
Right.
be developing. And then in the end of April, we will release something called Narrative Meditation,
Okay.
which is taking the layers of grief and the layers of trauma and guiding people through writing it out, pushing it out of themselves so it's not just living and harvesting in your body, but really putting it out into the universe, putting it out into the world. If they write their own book, that's awesome. If they, if it just helps get it out of them so that it's no longer a burden that they're carrying, that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely agree that writing and in some cases even like art therapy is really a healing for, I mean, a lot of just human experiences, and I can imagine dealing with PTSD. It's something that really helps. I was gonna say, you may not be like a clinical psychologist or anything, but here in the Netherlands, we will call you an experience expert. I mean, someone that went through the experience themselves and to some extent overcame it, and then is able to help other people to, yeah, overcome it themselves. And so, is your a nonprofit only in your state, or is it in the multiple states?
So we're able to serve worldwide because it's a digital platform. We use Zoom, so we're able to reach anyone where they're at.
That's great. That's good to have that. Like, I can imagine if you're going through something like this and you in your own place where you're living, you don't have something like this, that it's quite handy. I mean, that's one of the beauties of technology nowadays. I mean, even this interview wouldn't be possible without it, right? So it's really beautiful. So how did this change the way you see yourself? Just going through this, writing the book, and setting up your nonprofit. From before that to afterwards, how did it change the way you see yourself?
Yeah, it's really been a freeing experience. It's helped pull a lot of that burden off of me. I feel like I've been, the experience breaks you open, but I feel like the break has been too, as cheesy a metaphor as it is, it's like a metamorphosis. It's like, because I feel like a butterfly. I feel like I've emerged a stronger person finally from the difficulty that I had. And I think that the deepest level of love and of ability for me is to give back to people who have been in the same situation and need it. I think that's the strongest way that I can remember hope and make sure that I'm helping other people through it.
And how long has the organization been active?
We've just started in December of 2021. Yeah, so brand new. Still trying to get our 501c3 officially established, but I mean, like I said, we don't charge for our services, so we're still definitely a nonprofit. Definitely not making any money off of it. So
And that since, I mean, it's a short period of time, but in that short period of time, are you already reaching a lot of?
We've reached quite a few. Still working on pushing out our boundaries and things like that. It's hard for places like Planned Parenthood to focus on what we're doing because of the war on women that's happening right now and the war on reproductive rights. And so something I'm doing to try to help on that end is I'm taking my book and printing it at cost. And I'm doing something called the 50 States Challenge, where I send my book to all of the senators and the governors of each state, as well as our Supreme Court justices and our president.
Right.
And I send it to them and try to rewrite this narrative that they have in their head about reproductive rights and who needs abortions. And, it costs like $30 to sponsor a state. And so the response has been really good with folks donating to send books to their states. It's not about selling books because, like I said, I'm printing them at cost. It's about getting the narrative out there. And if we put the books in their hands. They have is on them and their humanity to read it. If they read it, it's on them and their humanity, the choices they make next. It's not a question of if they knew, it's a question of they knew and they still made this decision.
Yeah. And have you had any reactions from these governmental people so far?
Well, the books haven't gone out yet. My goal is to get them out by May. I'm about a third of the way towards my goal so far as printing and things like that. Okay. So by May, when elections start, they will have the books.
Right. Okay. I'm really curious how and if they will react to this. Once they react, I hope it's for the better and not kind of like for the worse or not at all. Kind of things that you never know. They're so unpredictable sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I think it's really beautiful what you have done with your story of basically suffering through having to do this abortion, and now that you're helping people. And so for anyone listening out there and they think maybe they're in a similar situation and they need your help, can they contact you? How can they get to your foundation?
Yeah, so they can find us at fromthegreendesk.com. They can also reach us on Facebook. I have an author page there, Kelsey Walker, or on Instagram, we're at from_the_green_desk. Sorry, I have to remember all the underscores. Even if they're not so sure about reaching out themselves yet and just want to follow us just to see what we're all about, we have posts almost daily that just talk about the blog, that talk about healing. This week was about the different services that From the Green Desk provides. Mm-hmm. So just reach out. Don't wait to reach out to get help. Make sure that you contact us, contact somebody to start telling your truth, because once you start telling your truth, your heart will get set free and you will have this huge weight lifted off of you.
Thank you very much for sharing your story of vulnerability with us. I can imagine it's not easy to go around and having to tell your story all over and over again, especially dealing with PTSD. It's already like repeating in your head in a way. And I commend you for having written it down and setting up your organization to help other people that are in this situation and to essentially give them a platform that you yourself didn't get to enjoy. Thank you very much, Kelsey, for joining me today. And on that note, closing off the Poison Honey podcast. Thank you for listening. Till next time.